They show up wearing pink, some of them holding signs. They line the streets cheering on a woman named Karen Reed. Karen Reed's not a celebrity. She's not a war hero. Karen is a college professor accused of murdering a Boston police officer named John O'Keefe. John and Karen were a couple who were practically living together. But on the night of January 28th, going into the early mornings of the 29th, they were out together. First at C.F. McCarthy's in downtown Canton, Massachusetts, then at the Waterfall Bar and Grill, and finally inside Karen's SUV in front of Brian Albert's house, who was having an after party with a bunch of the folks who were at the waterfall. The big question is, what happened to John O'Keefe after he stepped out of Karen's car? Prosecutors say she backed over him on purpose and drove away, leaving him in the snow to die. Karen says that is not true and believes John went into the party, got ambushed, and was placed onto the front yard to die in the cold. She also believes the people in the house, along with state and local police, framed her for John's murder. The defense has now rested their case. What did their experts prove to the jury, and how much is riding on tomorrow's closing arguments? We'll break it all down as we continue our investigation into the tragic death of Officer John O'Keefe. I'm Vinny Politan. Great to have you with us here on Closing Arguments. And wow, things are winding down in Dedham, Massachusetts. This is like the quiet before the storm, as a case ends and then we get to the final stages until finally the jury has it in their hands. And let me just start here. Closing arguments are important. Why else would we name the show Closing Arguments, right? It's the opportunity the last opportunity to convince this jury what your case is. You close it up. You know, many lawyers, when they get a case and they get a file, whether you're a prosecutor or defense attorney, you look at it, you understand the discovery, you understand the case, and you begin trying your case by writing or outlining your closing argument, because that's where you want to land. Now, you don't always get there. Things happen, but that's when you are putting together how you're going to try the case. I would say most attorneys start at the end, because this is where I need to be so I can make these arguments to the jury. They're significant. Now, the prosecutor in this case obviously is carrying the burden like in any other case. They've got to prove the case beyond any and all reasonable doubt, and it's a difficult burden in any case. In this case, it's even more difficult because of how the defense has been on the offensive. So the prosecutor carries the burden, has to prove it. So in his closing argument, from where I'm sitting here tonight, I believe that this prosecutor has to bring it. He has to make up some ground, and he's got to tie some things together in a way that maybe no one was imagining until his closing argument. And I say that because of the reaction to this trial, the public reaction. I took an unscientific poll on a couple of my social media accounts, two completely different accounts, but the results were almost identical. 86 and 87% of the people responding are saying they believe Karen Reed is not guilty, that this prosecutor has not proven his case. It's extraordinary. In a murder case on court TV, 86 to 87%, and I'm talking about 10,000 people or so responded to this poll. And it's consistent on both platforms. So what does that tell me? That tells me he's got to bring it. He's carrying that burden. That burden is heavy. He's got to close things up tomorrow. But the pressure is on the defense. The defense, you know, they always feel the pressure. They have the client sitting next to them. They have the person who could get locked up for the rest of their life. But in this case, with the public reaction being the way it's been, it seems like it's their case to lose at this point. That if you were keeping score, somehow they would be ahead. Now, we don't know what the 12 jurors are thinking. I never know what they're thinking. Sometimes I don't know what they're thinking after the verdict is rendered. You don't know what they're thinking. But if the public reaction is anything like the 12 in the box, the pressure is on these attorneys tomorrow. And that brings us to the ultimate question, which is, what will they say, this jury? They're the only ones who know. And as we sit here right now, they don't even know, because they have not deliberated yet. Let's bring in Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson, who is joining us live in the middle of it all from the courthouse in Dedham, Massachusetts. Wow, you talk about the quiet before the storm. Let's talk about a little bit of the storm today, which was the end of the defense case. Let's talk about those defense witnesses. And it seems like the defense finished on a strong note for what they are trying to establish in front of this jury.
Hey, Vinny, nice to see you. It was a big storm and a big, big day here in Dedham, Massachusetts. 74 witnesses before this jury. 9 weeks of testimony, and today the defense rested their case in chief. Now, Karen Reed did not take the stand. The bulk of their witnesses, 5 to be exact, were experts that they called, including an ER doctor, a cell phone expert, 2 crash reconstructionists, and the forensic pathologist who told the jury this today.
What is your opinion regarding whether those injuries are consistent with being struck, with an individual being struck by a vehicle?
If you mean struck in that part of the body, on the arm, like
Yes.
directly, I would say no, it doesn't look like that at all.
And then 2 crash reconstructionists were on the stand, Vinny, and they went through their testing process. They were hired by the federal government in the DOJ investigation. Jury doesn't hear that part, but they were hearing that they were not hired by either the Commonwealth or the defense, and they said that the injuries to John O'Keefe looked more like a fight than a car crash. Take a listen.
The taillight would make contact with a person holding a glass. Would that replicate what you did in terms of your firing a glass into the taillight? In other words, are they apples and apples?
No, I don't think it would be the same.
In your expert opinion, based on all your testing, is the damage to the taillight that you saw consistent with striking a human head?
No.
In your expert opinion, is the damage to the taillight consistent with striking a human arm?
No.
What, generally speaking, what injuries would you expect to see in a vehicle-pedestrian interaction at, say, 24 miles per hour?
24 miles an hour, once you get up to that speed, you start to see fractures. You see significant ligament and tendon damage. I mean, usually about 15 miles an hour, 15 mile an hour impact is where you start to see damage to, for instance, the leg and the knee. At that speed, you're going to produce, if you impact the vehicle, you're going to produce upwards of 1,000 pounds of force on the body, depending on what part of your body impacts the vehicle. So certainly at 25 miles an hour, you start to see significant injuries occur.
And Vinny, I was in court today watching that testimony. I was paying close attention to the jurors. Right now, 15 people in the box hearing the testimony. A lot of people were nodding to these experts, giving their opinion as they opined on all of this. And they also started to look at each other and nod as well, Vinny, which is a big contrast to when you had the crash reconstructionist with the state trooper that was on the stand giving his theory about how the crash happened. And there was one juror in the front that looked confused and actually mouthed the words, "What?"
Yeah, a big contrast between who the prosecution, the Commonwealth called, and who the defense called to the stand to testify about this. Their backgrounds are different, the way they testified was different, and the way they came to their conclusions was much different as well. Okay, couple questions now. We're getting ready for closing arguments tomorrow. What's going on behind you right now, and what do you expect tomorrow as we get ready for the big day as the jury will get this case?
Yeah, so I'm with Austin Brady once again, and you can see right here behind me all those people over there. They're media. They are told that they have to wait in line overnight, Vinny, or they are going to lose their place in line. So no telling who's going to get those 10 coveted seats for those closing arguments tomorrow, the much anticipated, bringing us to week 9 here. And, you know, the head-to-head matchup, it's going to be Adam Lally and Alan Jackson. They're going to deliver the closing arguments. It's going to be the defense first, and then the Commonwealth, the prosecution, each get 1 hour to speak to the jury and try to connect the dots. After court today, the defense was telling me that they feel very confident. The defense team actually doing a group huddle and hugging after they rested their case in chief today. And then they walked through the gauntlet. You've seen it many times. There was more than 200 Karen Reed supporters at the courthouse today, and they made their way back to court today, and they were walking through. People were taking pictures with them. They were cheering. So this defense team feels confident. But I wanted to know from the defense team how they're feeling in the 11th hour, and also if Karen Reed is regretting not taking the stand, how she feels. Take a listen. How do we feel? The defense rested?
I feel great, Matt. I feel great.
What a way to end a case, right? With a little truth and professionalism. It feels, you have no idea how good it feels to finally get this thing done.
So did you already do the colloquy? Did you already say you're not going to testify?
Yeah, I won't be. I won't be.
You said that it's hard not to be outspoken, you know?
Very.
And you also mentioned to the media that there are some things that you wish that you could clarify. Is there any?
They'll be clarified one day, Matt. They'll be clarified. It might not be live, but it will be.
One last question. Do you think life can ever be normal again for you?
It'll be different, but it'll be more settled than it is now. It'll never be the same. But it isn't for anybody ever in anyone's life.
As for the defendant that's facing life behind bars if convicted for second-degree murder, she tells me during deliberations she's going to be over at the church next door where they usually have their lunch, and she is going to be praying. She says that she's prayed quite a bit on this case.
Matt Johnson preparing for tomorrow. And remember, as soon as that jury gets the case, a verdict can happen at any moment. So you need to be watching Court TV, waiting for Matt to report the news. Thanks so much, Matt. I want to bring in a special guest joining me, criminal defense attorney, college instructor, and author, Peter Elligan. Peter, let me start here with just a reaction to the defense. There's an oozing of confidence coming from them. What do you think of that? Do you think, I mean, most defendants who go to trial get convicted, right? I mean, it's an overwhelming number. I think it's like somewhere between 80 and 90% of trials, criminal trials, end up with some form of a conviction. But there's a confidence there. What do you think about that?
This has been an unusual case from the beginning that would give them confidence. I mean, let's think about it. The prosecution started this case, and they didn't have an eyewitness, and to this day, they don't really have a mode of death. They even had the state medical examiner testify that it was blunt, blunt force, but didn't know whether it was a punch or a baseball bat or hit by a car. So they're starting out. This was an unusual prosecution in that they really didn't have this, as so many cases we see, the prosecution really has the case nailed down almost from the beginning. Here we saw that virtually every one of the many prosecution witnesses had holes knocked in them by the defense. The defense was really on the offensive. And even the expert witnesses that they brought in, the defense neutralized them and had somebody saying the opposite every step of the way. So this is very different than what we're used to. Most of them, it's like amazing if the defense actually wins. Most of the time, the defense does not win. This was a case where I'd almost feel bad if I was the defense counsel, because it's almost theirs to lose. It's like you're almost expected to win because the defense was so very strong here, and the prosecution case from the beginning was not the strongest.
I've been surprised before, so I go into these never knowing how 12 people are reading all of this, what they're going to put together. Let's talk about 1 hour. There's 1 hour as a time limit here. Sort of unusual for a murder trial on Court TV. We've seen closing arguments that have taken days. We've seen mostly that take hours at a time. 1 hour each here. Does that help one side more than the other here?
I think you could play this either way. It's as an attorney, I'd almost feel a relief. Like the judge said, I can only talk for an hour, so I don't have to worry about going on hour after hour and making every point. But I'd have to be very focused and succinct, like a bullet. Go in there, make all my major points, get in and get out. So in some ways, it almost makes it easier for the counsel and counselors. And also the jury will probably be relieved that they don't have to listen to her ever. I'm sure they're dying to, already start deliberating. And so it's going to be a relief for them too. And I'm not sure whether it's going to really help or hurt, but you have to be very focused. And I think it's very doable. You can do it within an hour. If you hit all the major points, don't talk about anything and everything and go on, but really, as I say, like a bullet, get in, make your major points and get out. And you can do a really excellent job that way.
Do you expect to hear either side argue or talk about alternative options for this jury outside of the top charge, whether it's lesser included or one of the other counts? Or do you think the focus just ends up on the murder charge, almost as if it's an all or nothing deal?
That would be my guess. And boy, this is just pure speculation on my part, though. That
well, you've tried a few cases, Peter. You've tried a few cases.
A couple, but the defense really didn't come up and wasn't able to establish their whole alternative story. They certainly brought reasonable doubt, like something happened to him in that house, and yet they didn't. Some of us at the beginning of the trial thought they were really going to point the finger at several people and come up with some real specifics on what happened inside that house. Instead, they just brought up question after question and made the whole business about getting hit by a car look very, very questionable. So I don't know if they can focus too much on an alternative theory. If I was the defense, I would just be all over, and I know it's starting to sound ad nauseum, ad infinitum. We keep saying reasonable doubt, but that's what I'd be hitting the jury over.
That's what this case is. This case turned into a reasonable doubt. It started off, we thought we were going to find out from the other side who specifically they believed did it, and they were going to have some level of proof of that. It really didn't materialize. They don't have to do that. We just thought that might happen. We're back to a classic defense case of there are potentially doubts about investigators, evidence, etc. Which do you think is more difficult? For the defense to overcome the alleged confession of Karen Reed, or for the prosecution to overcome the problems they have with their lead investigator?
I think that the problem with the lead investigator were so extraordinary, and I hate to keep talking in superlatives here, but we've seen some police officers who we accuse of unethical conduct, or et cetera, or doing a shoddy work. This was to the 10th power in every way, that he was, biased and should have pulled out of the case, and was saying horrible, vicious, monstrous things about her, and we did not do a thorough investigation. So I think that's really I really think that's the stronger case. As far as her, confession, I hit him. There was the defense did knock some holes into that. It was questionable whether she was saying things like, "Could I have hit?" People heard her say, "Could I have hit him?" or "Did I hit him?" And it was almost more of a questioning thing. And even one of the chief witnesses for the prosecution, Jennifer McCabe, when she testified in the grand jury, she never said, "I hit him." She said she heard her say, "Could I have hit him?" And it's only months and months later that she suddenly came up with that version, "I hit him." So they did bring up a lot of questions about that, but I can't deny it. That was a pretty strong point for the prosecution.
Yeah, I think the prosecution leans into Karen Reed and her alleged statements, behavior, and reactions, and I think the defense leans into Trooper Proctor. I think that's what we're going to see. Okay, Peter Elkins is going to stay with us. We're going to bring in the rest of our insiders, plus coming up next hour.
Mother of 5, Crystal Rogers, has been missing for almost 9 years. 3 men have been charged in her murder, and now 1 is cooperating. Will his cooperation lead to the discovery of Crystal's body?
This is an innocent woman. She didn't do it.
It's a controversial case that's divided a community.
Karen Reed is accused of murdering her police officer boyfriend.
Prosecutors say she ran him over on purpose and left him to die in the cold.
But Reed claims that she's being framed.
It smells suspicious.
After years of legal fireworks, will the truth finally be revealed?
The end game is to figure out who killed John O'Keefe and hold these people responsible.
The Killer or Cover-Up Murder Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, only on Court TV.
I am currently employed with the Massachusetts State Police. I am currently assigned to our Collision Analysis and Reconstruction Section, otherwise known as CARS, or Recon.
I'm a biomechanical engineer and accident reconstructionist.
And who do you work for?
I work for a company called ARCA LLC.
You were not hired by the defense in this case, correct?
No, we were not.
Time to meet the experts. Today was all about the experts in reconstructing what happened. What does the evidence say? You know, in this case, there is no eyewitness, so both sides relying upon experts to tell the story of what happened or could have happened or did not happen to John O'Keefe. So you have one from the prosecution, two from the defense, but the two from the defense, not hired by the defense, but testifying for the defense, they did it for the feds and were paid by the feds. So we're going to take a listen to their testimony. The easy way to keep track of who's on which side is if they have hair, they're on the side of the defense. If he doesn't have hair, he's on the side of the prosecution. Let's watch this battle of the experts.
So the vehicle was traveling in reverse.
And how fast was the vehicle traveling and over what distance?
The vehicle traveled up to 24 miles per hour and approximately 62 feet.
What, if anything, occurred then?
The right rear of the Lexus struck the pedestrian John O'Keefe.
And post-collision, what, if anything, occurred with regard to Mr. O'Keefe?
Mr. O'Keefe was projected forward and to the left along the front yard of 34 Fairview Road.
24 miles an hour. Once you get up to that speed, you start to see fractures. You see significant ligament and tendon damage. I mean, usually about 15 mile an hour impact is where you start to see damage to, for instance, the leg and the knee. At that speed, you're going to produce, if you impact the vehicle, you're going to produce upwards of 1,000 pounds of force on the body, depending on what part of your body impacts the vehicle. So certainly at 25 miles an hour, you start to see significant injuries occur.
When you look at the damage, he would have interacted with that left side of the vehicle. And when he got struck by the vehicle on the left side, it would have caused his vehicle to rotate kind of counterclockwise. And then when that rotation, he could turn it into his back, and his back could have struck the ground. I noted at the scene that there was asphalt curbing, which could have, somewhere he could have struck his head in there, or somewhere along any of the pavement would have caused damage.
Was the head injury that you saw consistent with falling backward from a standing position onto a rigid surface?
That's certainly one of the possible scenarios. That would create the injury mechanism. You fall backwards, strike your head on concrete. That can produce thousands of pounds of force on the head. And so that's certainly a scenario where you could produce that damage if someone was standing, they fell backwards and struck their head on the roadway or on the curb or a hard surface. Grass and dirt, no, that would certainly not produce the same amount of force as hitting your head on concrete.
And if it was grass and dirt with a little bit of snow on the top of it, what effect is that?
That's going to dampen and lessen the force even more so.
So the taillight in this case was shattered when it was struck John O'Keefe's arm.
Exactly what part of his arm?
Based on what I saw for his injuries, was from the upper part of his arm down.
Was his arm out? And it just struck the arm like a hinge? Was it in front of him? You did the reconstruction? It shows exactly how his body was positioned when he was struck by that.
So it looks like his arm was more kind of like this, if I can try to get that.
That amount of force on the arm, certainly you're going to see extensive subcutaneous lacerations, bruising, contusions. You're going to see most likely fracture of the arm as well. You're going to see significant damage. Just imagine having your arm out and being struck by a car at 25 miles an hour. There's going to be significant damage, more so compared to simply the abrasions that were diagnosed and documented on the arm in this case.
Is it consistent in your view with engineering principles and physics principles that you know if an arm is hit, extended, not the body, just the arm is struck, for the body then to be projected?
Objection.
I'll allow that.
It's not, no. So if we have contact, your arm's out, we have contact to the arm. I mean, first of all, it's a ball and socket joint, so the arm can move independently of the rest of the body. So with enough force, even if you're contracting your arm and trying to hold it out as tight as possible, it's going to overcome that muscular contraction and basically just move the arm.
Could you calculate the force that would be required to strike a person on his outstretched arm hard enough to spin him around and project him a number of feet?
If you're talking about only an interaction between the arm and the back of the vehicle, no, there wouldn't be any projection. Again, if you think about this, the arm weighs about, again, with Mr. O'Keefe would be about 11 pounds. So you still have, another 200 plus pounds being held down by gravity, and the force is only acting on the arm. So essentially, the arm would be accelerated, but the whole body, because the center of mass is not being struck, would not be projected.
So without eyewitnesses, that's what the jury is left with. Let's bring in our insiders. Joining us tonight, Karen Reed supporter, creator of the Justice for Officer John O'Keefe and Karen Reed Facebook page, Nick Rocco. Still with us, criminal defense attorney, college instructor, and author Peter Ellikin, and the YouTuber behind Yellow Cottage Tales, Kevin Lenahan, is with us. Nick, I'll begin with you. Your thoughts about what you heard from these experts versus the prosecution expert, and do you have any lingering questions?
No, I have no lingering questions, Vinny. I hope anybody that's watching this case that heard what these experts had to say, who were basically the most credible witnesses testifying and experts on the stand throughout this whole trial. So you have these two people who are hired by the feds who basically just told you the science and physics would not allow John O'Keefe's arm to break the taillight, send him into the yard 30 feet. These people not only, did tests, but put in the taillight in the freezer, making it 27 degrees and then testing it. They went above and beyond. So at this point, add the reasonable doubt to it, but this is the proof right here. Karen Reed did not strike John O'Keefe with her vehicle. And unfortunately, I don't think, unless the feds step in, the people who really did do this to John O'Keefe will be held responsible. But I do have faith that we're going to see indictments soon.
Kevin Lenahan, your thoughts about what the defense experts had to say compared to the prosecution, the Commonwealth's expert?
Well, there's no bigger bully to have on your side than the feds, right? And these are independent experts that work for the feds. Their company works for the feds. They wanted to please their boss. That's just the reality of it. That said, the state didn't do a very good job, I think, coming up with a theory that explains the accident or explaining the theory. But, accidents like these, pedestrian accidents, they're all different. Everyone is a mystery. And the data is bulletproof that shows that Karen's car hit John O'Keefe, and it's locked into the vehicle data combination with the phone data. But I personally think that maybe the arm was somewhat in a position like this and got pushed into the body.
Let me ask you this, Kevin, though. You mentioned something like they want to please the feds. What does that mean? Why do the feds have a dog in all of this? Why do the feds want this to not be Karen Reed striking John O'Keefe?
That's the $1 million question, right? All we know is that Karen and her team in August of 2022, long before any weird data from Rich Green, walked into the then first U.S. Attorney's Office, Josh Levy, and convinced him that there was a massive conspiracy going on. And ever since then, he's been coordinating with them and been on their side. And that's the most important aspect of this case that everybody has to get to the bottom of, because that is corruption.
Peter Ellikin, have you ever seen a case where there's allegations like this, that the feds are working with criminal defense attorneys?
No, and as a matter of fact, the feds all the time hear people complaining about, oh, we think the cops are corrupt and we don't like what the prosecution did. People come in with those complaints all the time. So that's why it is so extremely rare that the feds actually not only do an complete investigation, but they also start having grand jury hearings. They don't do that just on somebody said this. And again, as you use that expression, they don't really have a dog in this fight. I don't know why the feds would suddenly want to go after police, even if they think the police didn't do anything wrong. Let's just go after police and go after prosecutors. That's absurd. I have not heard that accusation before about that. If anything, they're kind of the outsiders who aren't they don't have the power to prosecute this case, or they can just kind of look in and see if it was done fairly or not. And I can't imagine what stake they would have in just fabricating and making up something just so they can go after any police officer or prosecutor.
So, Kevin, what are your thoughts about? Go ahead, Kevin.
They had, but their coordination with Karen's team has been extremely unusual. There's a whole bunch of elements to this that I've documented. Whatever's going on we need to get to the bottom of it. It's very important. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, the question I had now is getting back to the trial and what the jury has to consider. And like, I'm hearing from you tonight, Kevin, that you didn't necessarily believe what Trooper Paul said either, right? You have like an alternative thought. So what did you think of the trooper's testimony? And what did you think of his level of expertise in explaining this? Not just explaining, but giving a basis for his explanation. Because what I heard today from the defense experts who weren't hired by the defense but testified for the defense is, you know, these guys are engineers. They backed it up with some level of science. It wasn't just coming to a conclusion and using common sense. Like, common sense isn't what expert testimony is about. And that's what I felt like Trooper Paul was trying to, well, it's like this and it spun him around and he could have landed like this. Okay, I could say that, right? But do you know what I mean? Like, did you take anything away from Trooper Paul's testimony? Because he's the one who they're relying on to paint this picture for the jury.
I didn't find his testimony convincing, but at the same time, these federal experts trying to say that his arm was out like that never made sense to me either. I think it's more tucked in or something like that. But, you know, obviously it was up to the state to explain that better. But there's still more than enough evidence to show here that Karen did this.
And Peter, let me just follow up with you from your legal experience in the courtroom. A lot of times in the battle of the experts, you have two completely different things. We kind of have that here. Do juries generally accept one or the other? Do they come to their own conclusions like Kevin is doing right now, regardless of what the experts are saying? What's been your experience?
Sometimes some of the experts are so much, greater than the other experts, and they're so much sharper that the jury will decide to basically side with one expert over another. In this one, though, I think under the best case scenario, with experts kind of canceling each other out, if it's a battle of the experts and the jury walks away saying, gee, I heard somebody sounded impressive here, another person sounded impressive, I don't know what to make of things, I'm confused, then that is not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. So if there's any kind of confusion at all, they don't side with a particular expert. That goes to the defense also.
All right, when we come back, we asked Kevin and Nick, our insiders, to give us their most compelling pieces of evidence. And then we'll allow the other side to respond.
What, if any, movement did you observe following 12:25 a.m. until the period of 6:15 a.m.?
None until it was found at 6:15.
Important testimony for the prosecutors in this case. That's Trooper Nicholas Garino talking about the location of John O'Keefe's phone. Now, something that we did prior to the show, we reached out to Kevin Lenahan, Nick Rocco. We asked them both for what they believe is the most compelling evidence that comes to mind when they think about this long, long case, 30 days of testimony over 9 weeks. And this was something that Kevin pointed to. So let's play a little bit more of the testimony of Trooper Nicholas Garino.
And from review of that native location data, what time does the phone arrive in the area of 34 Fairview Road?
12:24 a.m.
Now, the next entry as far as the location data, when is that and where is it indicating that the phone is at that point?
It shows me it's there the entire night, right in between 32 and 34 Fairview. So
And 32, 34 Fairview, that sort of intersection of those two residences, if you know, where is that in relation to where Mr. O'Keefe was found just after 6 a.m. in the morning?
I was only going by the photos that Sergeant Good had taken and from the Canton PD cruiser cam, but that area would be within 3 feet, give or take, of the area where the GPS signals all plot for the rest of the night.
All right, Nick Rocco, tell me why you don't find this evidence compelling, because this, I mean, if the phone is there, it's there. And if the phone is on the lawn the whole time, I mean, there's only one explanation for what happened to John O'Keefe.
Well, as far as John O'Keefe's phone, you know, not moving after the 12:25 mark, we do see on his Apple Health data that there is a time between 12:31 and 12:32 where he takes 36 steps. He was in the house by that point already. That could have been when they found his phone, or potentially put his phone in airplane mode, so you don't see any more steps after that. But as far as John being on the lawn, being in front of that flagpole, the science and the physics, like we heard today, does not match up. He could not have gotten thrown that far into the lawn, being hit 24 miles per hour by his arm, or even being sideswiped. It's just physically impossible. The data and nothing proves that she hit him. I mean, it's literally that simple. I know the GPS, this and that, but as we've seen, the defense has said as well, the GPS could not be accurate. We don't know that it's I don't want to say, no, it's a dead zone over there, is what Albert had said about his house, because the cell phone towers aren't that great. So who knows if that's accurate to begin with. But John O'Keefe did not get struck by Karen Reed's vehicle.
Now, I'm going to show for you what Nick gave us as his most compelling evidence in the case. We begin with a video that was shown in court. This is a screen grab from the Sally Port, the infamous Sally Port video. And it turns out, you put them side by side, apparently the video was put into evidence in a mirror image. It was turned around. So the one on the right is the correct way, but the one on the left is the way it was shown and given to this jury. Here is the testimony of Sergeant Buchanan from the Massachusetts State Police.
From this perspective, from the perspective that the jurors are looking at, from all indications, that would appear to be the right side of the truck, the passenger side of the truck, and that taillight that you can see is the right rear taillight from this perspective, correct?
The way it presents itself, yes.
And yesterday, during the entirety of your questioning by Mr. Lally, not once did you mention that this video is actually completely inverted, correct?
I did not know.
Mr. Lally didn't ask you if it was inverted, correct?
That's correct.
And if I hadn't gotten up here and begun questioning you, that would be left uncorrected.
And the reason this is so significant, because if you look at the way it was shown in court, the broken tail light would appear to be the one that's closest to the camera. So if anyone is doing anything to it, you would see them. But the broken tail light is actually on the far side. And if you turn it around, now if there's anyone doing anything, and there were people milling behind the car, if they're doing anything to the broken tail light, you would not see it. And the bottom line is, this prosecutor, along with the Massachusetts State Trooper, put this in front of the jury, inverted, mirror imaged, and did not let them know about it. So, Kevin Lenahan, why isn't that compelling evidence in this case?
Because as you see that video there with the SUV pulling in, and then a couple of minutes later, the garage door closes. At that very time, the 7-man CERT team is just beginning to shovel out the area that they're going to search at the crime scene. And the total area they search is about the size of 2 parking spaces. In addition to those 7 guys, there's also the Lieutenant Commander Tully, who was there watching them. So to me, it's not that compelling. And I just wanted to add since we like timelines here. At 1:18, that's when Karen left a message for John saying that she believed he was cheating on her. Okay, that's the last time she called for a while. At 4:38, she calls again. At 4:40, she calls her parents. At 4:42, she calls her parents. At 5, she tells Kerry Roberts that John is dead. So what information did she get in those 3 hours that changed her from thinking that John was sleeping around to John is dead. She got some information that made her change her mind.
Nick, did you want to respond to that?
Just as simple as the science and the physics do not show that John O'Keefe was struck by a vehicle. So anything after that point is irrelevant. And that is why these experts didn't have to see the vehicle. They didn't have to see the taillight, because throughout their whole testing, none of this points to being struck by a vehicle. And then it's that simple. I mean, so, these phone calls, these voicemails, everything else, the leaf blower, it's all irrelevant. John didn't get struck by that car, and Karen didn't hit him with the vehicle.
All right, Peter, I'm going to give you the final word here. As this jury gets the case tomorrow, you have a lot of experience with jurors and juries in Massachusetts. Is this one going to take a long time? You're talking about all these witnesses, 30 days of testimony. They've been there for 9 weeks. What are your expectations based on your experience trying cases?
Well, let's keep in mind that for the last 9 weeks or so, they have not been able to talk to each other. This is the very first time. I mean, we've all been gossiping and giving our opinions and back and forth. All of Massachusetts has been doing this, and they've had to keep their mouths shut. So when they get in that room, I'm sure they're ready to explode, like, oh, this is what I think, or what do you think of that? So it's going to take a little while to go through all the 70-something witnesses and all the, hundreds and hundreds of exhibits. And yet, I don't think that it's going to take all that long. I don't see this going on for days and days, maybe a couple of days or so. I tend to think they're going to come back quickly. There's just, as we said earlier, there's just an extraordinary amount of reasonable doubt here, much more than the average murder case, much more than the average criminal case we've ever seen. And it's been like building blocks every step of the way. Every person.
Usually the building blocks are going the other way. We've seen this case is different. I don't know what the jury's going to do, but we shall see. Big thank you to Nick Rocco, Peter Elkin, Kevin Lenahan. Let's meet again tomorrow.